Hey friends, today is January 26th. We are going to be working on Module 3, Unit 1, Lesson 2 today, reading for the gist of Revolutionary War, Part 1. So remember when we're talking about the gist, we're talking about what something is, what something's about. Um, and let's move on and get started. So here are our learning targets today. I can determine the gist of Revolutionary War Part 1, and I can determine the meaning of unfamiliar words and phrases in Revolutionary War Part 1. So here we're going to get started first. I'm going to read you Revolutionary War Part 1, and then we're going to do some work with it. Okay, let's get started. You are going to open to your module workbook. This is on page 3 through 5. And I'm going to pull it up here on the screen. This is probably also attached in your Google Classroom. So you can either pull it up here, I guess, or look at your module workbook, which would probably be ideal. So here we go. Let's read. April 19th, 1775 marked the end of an era. At dawn that day, British troops fired on American colonists in Lexington and Concord, Massachusetts. This was the beginning of the American Revolution. The war started as a fight for the rights of English people in Britain's 13 American colonies. But those people soon declared and won their independence from Britain. They created a new nation, the United States of America. The founders. Many people made American independence possible. A group of them are known as the founders of the United States. The best known are George Washington, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, and Alexander Hamilton. George Washington led the American military forces, the Continental Army, to victory over the British. He later became the first president of the United States. John Adams was the strongest supporter of American independence. He became the first vice president of the United States and its second president. Thomas Jefferson wrote the Americans' Declaration of Independence. He became the nation's third president. Benjamin Franklin was the oldest of the founders. He was 70 when the Declaration of Independence was signed. Franklin helped get France to become an ally of the United States. Both during and after the Revolution, Alexander Hamilton urged Americans to form a stronger union of the United States. Events leading to the Revolution. Britain established its first colony in North America in 1607. By the early 1760s, there were 13 colonies. These were Connecticut, Delaware, Georgia, Maryland, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New York, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, South Carolina, and Virginia. About 1.5 million colonists lived there. The colonists were far away from Britain, and they were used to running their own affairs. Each had its own assembly. They ran the everyday business of the colonies and collected taxes. Britain rarely taxed the Americans. The French and Indian War, which was from 1754 through 1763, changed that. Britain won that war against France, but the war was costly and Britain owed a lot of money. Britain also needed to keep up its army in North America. The British therefore decided to tax the Americans. Colonial opposition. The British Parliament passed the Stamp Act in 1765. It taxed newspapers and almost everything else that was printed. This angered the colonists. Why, they asked, should we pay taxes to Britain? The colonists decided to fight against these taxes. Representatives of the 9 colonies met in New York in 1765. They formed the Stamp Act Congress. It said the colonists should boycott or refuse to buy British goods. Groups called the Sons of Liberty also fought against British taxes. They often used violence against British tax collectors. The colonists' opposition forced Parliament to repeal or withdraw the Stamp Act. This made the colonists aware of their power. Other British attempts to impose new taxes only made things worse. Boston was the center of opposition to Britain's tax policies. In 1760, a raggedy crowd of people taunted some British soldiers. The frightened soldiers shot into a crowd, killing 5 Americans. The Boston Massacre, as it was called, led to a new boycott. Parliament again gave in. It removed all taxes except for one on tea, the most popular drink in the colonies. The Americans were outraged. On the night of December 16, 1773, a group of men boarded the ships in the Boston harbor. They threw the cargoes of tea overboard. This action became known as the Boston Tea Party. The British Parliament then passed four harsh measures in 1774. The colonists called them the Intolerable Acts. These acts closed the port of Boston. They took away many of Massachusetts' rights of self-government, and they allowed the British troops to be housed in private homes. These measures only served to unite the colonists, and more of them felt that their basic liberties were at stake. In 1774, representatives of all the colonies except Georgia met in Philadelphia at the First Continental Congress. They tried to get Britain to resolve the issues peacefully, but they were ready to fight if it became necessary. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to look back at this text and kind of break it apart, right? So when we read for the gist, we're kind of breaking it down and looking at each section and talking about what it was about. So if you could go back to the beginning, to this very top paragraph, we're going to look at the very first paragraph one more time. Okay. All right. Now, I want you just to take a minute and pause it, and I want you to reread that independently. Okay. And then we're going to write the gist. So take a minute and reread it. Okay. All right. Now that you've reread it, I want you to go right here and I want you to type in the gist. Okay. So the gist is the American Revolution began in 1775 and was a war about the rights of people living in the American colonies. Okay, so that's the gist. So write that down. When you're done, I want you to reread this section all about the founders, and then we're going to come in and type the gist. So reread it independently, pause it, and when you get done, come back and let's write in the gist. Okay, so the gist here is the founders of the United States were people who played an important part in the American Revolution and the Declaration of Independence. Okay, so write that in. When you get done, please move to the next section. We're going to read events leading to the revolution. Pause it and read that. Then we're going to write down the gist. The gist here is that Britain started, the American colonies. So it taxed Americans after the French and Indian War to raise the money it owed. People were really upset about paying those taxes. They didn't feel like it was fair. Now read the next section, colonial opposition. When you're done, we're going to type in the gist. Oh, I'm sorry. It goes all the way to the end of the next page, doesn't it? Not bad, guys. What was I thinking? All right, let's go to the bottom, and we'll write in the gist down here. So the gist here is that the colonists started to fight against paying taxes, which resulted in events like the Boston Massacre and the Boston Tea Party. And I see that I did this, so I'm going to fix that. I'm going to make that a little bigger for you. Okay, so go ahead and write that in as well. So those are the gist for each of our sections. All right, now, um, let's just quick review some vocabulary. So, colonies are areas of land ruled by another country. So, in this module, we're talking about the American colonies, that there were 13 of them that we read, and they were ruled by Great Britain. Colonists are the people who live in the colony. Declared means announced. And nation is a large group of people living on a piece of land, such as a country. So, I want you to reread the founders. Oh, look at that. And we've already done our gist. And that's okay. Circle any unfamiliar words when you reread that. And then let's see if we can help answer those for you. At home, if you don't know those words, ask your parents or look them up online. And I want you to do the same. Reread events leading to the revolution and colonial opposition. Circle any unfamiliar words. And in class, we'll talk about them. At home, ask your parents. Okay, so we wrote down some questions yesterday in our lesson on colonial voices, and I want you to, we're going to look at them in class. So if you missed class, don't worry about this part. But if you did not miss class, we're going to talk about those questions, and we are going to write down any answers that we might have to any of those questions. So did we successfully find the gist? Yep, I think we did. And oh goodness, I don't even remember what our other learning target was, friends. It was I can determine the meaning of unfamiliar words. And at home, you might have had a little more trouble with that than we did in class, but here we did that together. Great job, friends. Have a wonderful day. We'll see you tomorrow.